There's a small, quick check just off the highway, not too far from where I live. It's the only place open 24/7 in my quiet, middle-of-nowhere town. About a 25-minute drive if I'm speeding, which, let's be honest, I usually am. So for all you city folk, that basically means it's right next door. My sleep schedule is absolutely awful. I've been to that quick check more times than I can count. I like to think I'm pretty average looking, someone who blends in easily. But at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the late night workers recognize me. This happened just last week, so the details are still painfully fresh in my mind. It was past midnight. I was deep in a coding session. That perfect flow state that only hits between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. The problem with working late, though, is that 1 minute you're fine, and the next you're starving. Around 2 a.m., I shut everything down and decided to grab something to eat. The road to the quick check is more of a local back road than an interstate, so it's usually silent at that hour. The ride there was uneventful. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the soft glow of my dashboard lights. When I arrived, I ordered a sandwich from the counter and started pacing around the aisles while waiting. Between caffeine and ADHD, sitting still isn't exactly my strong suit. That's when I noticed something. At the far end of the store, sitting cross-legged on the floor and facing one of the refrigerators, was a person. It was such an odd sight that I actually walked past before my brain caught up. Then I stopped, turned, and looked again. No mistake, someone was just sitting there, staring into the fridge. All I could see was a brown coat and jeans. Curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see his face, so I walked a few aisles down, planning to peek around the corner quickly, just long enough to glance, then duck away before he noticed. But the second I turned the corner, he snapped his head around and looked straight at me. His movement was so sharp that I froze. That's when I realized something about this guy wasn't right. His eyes were too wide, his lip trembling like he was shivering, except it was warm inside. He sat stiffly, his posture tense, like he was struggling just to stay still. And that stare, blank, distant, almost empty. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just stared. It sent a chill straight through me. After a few seconds that felt like forever, I looked away and slipped up another aisle, trying to act casual. My heart was pounding. I went back to the counter, pretending to check my phone, keeping one eye on that corner. He never moved. When my food was finally ready, I grabbed it and headed straight for the door. I told myself that was the end of it. But as I turned onto the highway, I caught movement in my side mirror. Someone running across the parking lot. I glanced back. A man in a brown coat. Him. He rushed toward a pickup truck at the far end of the lot and climbed inside. I didn't wait to find out why. I pressed down on the gas and merged onto the empty road. After a few minutes, the store lights faded behind me, replaced by pitch-black nothingness. That's when I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I figured it was just another driver, but they were getting closer, fast, too fast. Maybe a police car? I slowed down, expecting flashing red and blue lights, but none appeared. Then the truck got close enough for me to recognize it. Brown coat, same truck, same guy. My stomach dropped. He started flashing his high beams, honking, weaving from side to side, like he was trying to get my attention. I accelerated, trying to put distance between us. He stayed right behind me. The faster I went, the more my nerves kicked in. Every instinct screamed that something was seriously wrong. I switched lanes, hoping he'd pass. Instead, he mirrored every move I made. I slowed down, thinking I'd pull over and let him go by. But then he suddenly tapped the back of my car. The jolt rattled me. My hands trembled as I tried to steady the wheel. Another quick swerve from him, and I realized this wasn't just bad driving. I braked hard and swerved to the side. His truck shot past me, spinning slightly, before veering off the road into a field. I didn't stop to look. I just kept driving, hands shaking, heart racing, adrenaline surging. When I finally got home, I called the police and told them everything. They took my statement, though I couldn't even describe exactly where it happened. Still, I'm sure the quick check cameras caught him. It's been a week now. I haven't heard anything. My car's a little damaged, but I'll get it fixed soon. As for why he came after me that night, I still don't know. All I know is I never ever want to see that man again. This happened in the summer of 2022. I was 25 and working a weird logistics job. I hauled refurbished electronics and custom PC parts for a small last-mile startup trying to reach rural places most companies ignored. The routes were long and unpredictable. Sometimes I'd drive for 12 hours straight, mostly overnight, cutting through remote parts of the Southwest. The pay was decent, and I didn't mind the miles. I grew up in a road trip family. That night, I was on the final leg of a Phoenix to Lovington run. Around 1 a.m., I was winding along a lonely stretch of Route 82, just past the outskirts of Lincoln National Forest in southern New Mexico. If you've never driven that area at night, it's hard to explain how isolated it feels. The road is narrow and barely lit. You might see another car every 20 or 30 minutes. If you're lucky. Route 82 is the only practical path through that part of the state. Detours would add hours. I was halfway through a true crime podcast when my headlights swept over a red hatchback pulled on the gravel shoulder, hazards flashing. A woman stood beside the car, holding her phone up like she was hunting for a signal. My first instinct was to keep driving. That stretch of highway at that hour isn't exactly the place you want to stop for strangers. But then I thought about my girlfriend, my sister. What if they were stuck out there? I'd want someone to stop. I wasn't completely without options for protection, so I rolled my passenger window down a few inches. The woman rushed over and tried the door handle. Locked. She asked for a ride to the nearest gas station. Her car had died and she couldn't get a signal. Her voice was jittery and uneven, either panicked or under the influence. Everything about the situation felt off. I hesitated, then unlocked the door. She slid in quickly, murmuring, "Thank you," without looking at me. Her words were slurred, and she kept deflecting my questions about what happened to her car. Then I glanced back at the hatchback. A man stepped out from behind the car like he'd been waiting. My chest tightened. Another figure moved onto the road ahead, maybe 50 feet away. He held something long in his hands. From the angle, I couldn't tell exactly what it was. Instinct took over. I hit the gas and drove. No second guessing. The woman spun around and started screaming. She reached down into her bag, fumbling for something. I called at her to stop and held up my hand so she could see I wasn't hiding anything, just trying to de-escalate. Whatever she was going for, she froze. For the next half hour, We didn't say a word. When I finally pulled into a gas station outside Artesia, I told her to get out. She refused and kept mumbling. I opened the passenger door, helped her onto the pavement, and stepped back so others could see she was okay. A trucker nearby started jogging over, probably thinking the worst. I didn't stick around to explain myself. I told him quickly that something felt off, then left before the scene could turn into a bigger mess. A few miles down the road, when I stopped to refuel and calm my hands, I checked the passenger seat. Tucked between the cushions was a small, spare phone battery and a sealed, odd little pack of what looked like hardware ties. I didn't want to think about what that could mean. I tossed them in the trash, filled up, and drove on, just wanting the night to end. I never reported it, not to the police, not to the company, not because I didn't want to, but because explaining why I'd stopped and why I left would have opened a whole other can of questions. You can connect the dots. All I'll say is this. Being prepared that night probably saved me. We had just stopped to grab a few snacks and fill up the tank. I figured it was my last chance, for a while, to use a real bathroom. So I got out and headed inside. I didn't bother bringing my phone or purse. I was only going to be gone for a minute. The cashier, an older man, didn't even glance up when I walked in. The bathrooms were down a narrow side hallway near the back of the store. As I opened the women's restroom door, I almost bumped into a woman coming out of one of the stalls, which wouldn't have been strange if not for how she looked. Her grey hair was tangled and unkempt, like it hadn't been brushed in days. She wore foam flip-flops that made a soft slapping sound with each step, and she had a thick purple and green coat wrapped tightly around her, even though it was nearly 80 degrees outside. She held a tied-up grocery bag and just stared at me. Not a quick glance, a locked, fixed stare, like she was waiting for me to do something. I gave her a polite nod and tried to step around her, but she didn't move aside. Eventually, I slipped past and thought that was the end of it. But instead of leaving, she turned back toward the sinks. She didn't wash her hands or check her reflection. She just stood there quietly, arms at her sides, eyes fixed on me through the mirror. It was unsettling. I went into the nearest stall and locked it. The second I sat down, I regretted not bringing my phone. If something went wrong, I'd have no way to contact my husband. Something about her presence didn't feel right. I waited, hoping she'd leave. After a few minutes, I finally heard the faint sound of flip-flops moving toward the door, the hinges creaking and the door closing. Relieved, I waited a few extra seconds just in case. That's when I realized something. I could still hear breathing. Not mine, someone else's. It hit me. She might have pretended to leave. I froze. I tried to quiet my breathing, afraid to make a sound. After a long silence, the door opened and closed again, and the breathing stopped. A wave of relief hit me. Still, I waited. Just as I was about to unlock the stall, I heard a sharp inhale, like someone catching their breath, followed by the door opening and closing again. She'd faked it twice. My heart was racing. I didn't know what she wanted, but the way she was acting made it clear something was off. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I quietly unlocked the stall and stepped out, expecting her to be there. But the bathroom was empty. I washed my hands quickly and hurried out. I didn't know where she'd gone, or if she was still nearby. Back near the counter, a large man was checking out. I waited for him to finish and followed him toward the exit, using him as a sort of shield. Maybe I was just overthinking it. But that thought vanished the second I stepped outside. She was there, standing just off to the side of the entrance, watching me. She was holding something small and shiny. I couldn't tell what, but the way she gripped it made me tense up. I froze, ready to move or call out. But before I could, she turned and quickly walked around the side of the building. I hurried to the car and jumped in. My husband looked confused and asked what had taken so long. "I'll explain once we're back on the road," I told him. He didn't ask questions. He just drove. As we pulled away, I glanced back. She was standing at the corner of the building, watching our car disappear into the dark. I told my husband everything. He wasn't happy that I hadn't brought my phone, which was fair. We agreed to try and forget it and enjoy the rest of the trip. But to this day, I don't use roadside restrooms anymore. Not ever. I got into my truck quickly, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. As I headed toward the exit, the van's lights behind me suddenly turned off again. At first, I figured maybe someone was sleeping inside and had accidentally hit the switch. But once I got back on the highway, I kept checking my mirrors, just in case. For about 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then, in the distance, I saw 2 small headlights approaching, growing closer. It was the same van, a plain, boxy white cargo van. No logos, no side windows, just a blank shell gliding through the night. It caught up quickly, closing the gap until it was right behind me. I was already going 75, but it stayed inches from my bumper. Then it switched lanes, pulled up beside me, and matched my speed. The driver rolled his window down halfway. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the outline of a baseball cap. He gestured for me to roll down my window. I didn't. He kept pointing toward the back of my truck, like he was trying to tell me something was wrong. For a moment, I hesitated. Maybe he was trying to help. But then I remembered. My truck bed was completely empty. That's when I realized he wasn't trying to warn me. I kept driving, pretending not to notice, but he began honking. Long, sharp blasts echoing through the night. Then he drifted closer into my lane, edging me toward the shoulder. I swerved slightly to avoid him, and he suddenly sped ahead, pulling in front of me. For a moment, I thought he was about to stop, but instead, he veered off and came to a complete halt on the shoulder. My heart was pounding. I pressed harder on the gas. A few seconds later, I checked my mirror. The van was moving again. It followed me for miles, sometimes hanging far behind, then surging forward out of nowhere, headlights flaring in my rearview mirror. I decided I needed to find somewhere public, fast. The next sign said there was a truck stop, 5 miles ahead. I took the exit and pulled straight into the lot, parking under a bright floodlight near a line of semis. Through the diner windows nearby, I could see drivers eating and talking. For about 2 minutes, the van didn't appear. I started to think I'd lost it. Then I saw it. Creeping slowly up the ramp, I got out immediately and walked into the diner. The bell above the door jingled, and the woman behind the counter looked up. I told her a van had been following me for the last half hour. She must have seen how shaken I was, because she called over a truck driver sitting nearby. The man stood up, tall, broad-shouldered, with a grey beard. He didn't say much, just nodded and walked outside with me. The moment we stepped out, we saw it. The van idling at the far end of the lot, headlights on, facing my truck. The trucker muttered, "Yeah, that's not good," and told me to go back inside. He walked toward it calmly. I couldn't hear what was said, but a few seconds later, the van suddenly reversed, turned around, and drove off, back toward the highway. The trucker came back, shaking his head. He said there were 2 people inside, both wearing hoodies, both silent. I stayed in that diner for nearly an hour before getting back on the road. When I reached Davenport, I parked under the hotel lights and checked my truck. Everything looked fine, except for 2 dark smudges on the tailgate, like someone had touched it with dirty hands. I quit that job a few months later. Now, whenever I drive long distances, I fill up before dark, bring snacks, and only stop at places that are crowded and open 24 hours, because I know one thing for sure. If I'd rolled down that window or stopped when they told me to, things could have ended very differently.